dear Commissioner Ferreira, dear former presidents of the European Parliament and of the former Members Association, dear colleagues and guests. Let me welcome you to our online event, which is being organized by the European Parliament Former Members Association to celebrate its 20th anniversary. So we are still young with 20 years. I'm very honored and proud to be the FMA president in this very special year. I have to give you an information that we have interpretation in English and French. Please make sure you select your preferred language in the system. I am honored to welcome the European Commissioner for Cohesion and Reforms and former member of the European Parliament, Elisa Ferreira. And I have realized already before our official meeting how familiar, Commissioner, you are with some members of the former members, or with many perhaps, of the former members association. And we are very happy that you are a member of our... And we are very happy that you are a member of our association who kindly accepted our invitation to be present at this special event and hold an online conversation about, I quote, cohesion policy for economic recovery and growth in the post-COVID time, end of the quote. Our association is surely on your side in this fight, and you can count on our support in promoting a well-informed, plural and constructive dialogue on the European Union economic recovery. Only united we can win the challenges ahead, ensuring EU economic recovery and growth in the years to come. Today, our audience is composed of our special guests. I would have liked to welcome first our honorary president, Lord Plum, Henry Plum, who just some minutes ago apologized that he cannot come because of, I think, personal reasons, but he sends his best regards to all of you. It's a pleasure to welcome and to see you on the screen, President Jose Maria Gil Robles. Then I follow the line of, now I did not totally follow the line of the presidencies. Then I should have begun with Enrique Baron Crespo, if I'm correct, and then Pat Cox. But anyhow, you're all most welcome. And for me, you all were a great example how I could realize my presidency. I want to thank all of you very warmly for your presence tonight, and will give you the floor following your initial speech for short remarks. I want to welcome the representatives of the European Political Foundation representatives, the president of the Wilfried Marten Center for European Studies, Mikuláš Dzurinda, former Prime Minister of Slovakia. Then the European Progressive Studies Foundation is represented by its Secretary General, László Andor, former EU Commissioner for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion. And then I want to welcome the President of the European Association of Former Parliamentarians, Rune Rieden. I want to welcome the Director of the Historical Archives of the European Union in Florence, Dieter Schlenker. The family members of deceased former MEPs, the families of Paolo Bartolozzi, the family of Marie-Hélène Descamps, from Eusebio Cano Pinto, from Katika Tamara Liotard, from Arthur Stanley Newens, and Konrad K. Schweiger. But last but not least, I warmly welcome our association's members, former parliamentarians who are still very active in political life and are the soul and substance of our association, and who contributed to its success over these 20 years. I see a long list of friends and colleagues with whom I shared my years of service in the European Parliament. All those present in this discussion are deeply involved and committed to informing citizens about policies and actions in strategic fields for the development of the European Union, and we want to join our forces with academic institutes, think tanks, and media, among others. We all play a crucial role in communicating with citizens, although, and I think this is a word of Henry Plum, we are not active politicians anymore. We are the former members association. This afternoon, we organized a public event in cooperation with the support of the European Political Foundations and the European University Institute in Florence about, I quote, EU post-COVID recovery based on cohesion, principles and values, end of the quote, with an excellent panel of experts ready to interact with a large audience. We gathered a lot of information and are now eager to receive the political views from our Commissioner, Elisa Ferreira. We heard a lot that digital transformation and climate change are the key issues for the European Union growth, but we also looked at the disparities in the different regions of Europe, so different opportunities and challenges. We certainly want to hear more about this, given the huge amount of investments foreseen and the importance of this topic for future generations and for the EU as a whole. Before giving you the floor, dear Commissioner Ferreira, please allow me to provide some additional elements about your outstanding career. Commissioner for Cohesion and Reforms since 2019. Vice Governor of Banco de Portugal, Central Bank, 2017 to 2019. Portugal's representative at the Supervisory Board of the Single Supervisory Mechanism from 2016 to 19. Member of the Board of Banco de Portugal, 2016-2017. And now the highlight, member of the European Parliament, 2004 to 2016. So this is 12 years, and this is quite a good time. And we said in our unofficial conversation before this official meeting now that for you, it was really a great time, maybe the best time in your political life. You were member of the Portuguese Parliament from 2002 to 2004. You were Minister for Planning, Minister for Environment, Executive Vice President of the Porto Industrial Association, Vice President of Portugal's Northern Region, Coordination Commission, member of the Board of Portugal's Statistics Authority. And I will stop here, one could go on, but then I would use the whole time of our meeting. Dear Commissioner Elisa Ferreira, I ask you to have the floor to deliver your keynote speech, you follow now, I believe, by an intense and lively question and answers with our guests and colleagues. We do not want to waste time, as you need to leave by 7:30, 19:30. So I ask you now to make your speech, and you are once again most welcome. Please, Commissioner Elisa Ferreira.
Well, thank you very much. Such kind words, dear President Hans-Gert Pöttering, and to all the colleagues and the eminent members of our long history of working together in the European Parliament. It's such an honor for me to see you again and to be invited to celebrate with you, well, an early age, as you, President, just mentioned, 20 years. Anyway, it's worth celebrating 20 years of us being together and having created an opportunity to keep in touch, to go on exchanging ideas, to go on being active members of our societies, even if not active members in the political framework of the European Parliament. And it is very important for me also to be able to discuss with you issues of great importance to the European project, such as this topic that I'm very glad that you have asked me to address. So how to have a cohesive and resilient recovery. And in fact, as you were kind enough to mention, as a former member myself for 12 years, and if effectively you were kind of playing with it, but it was really a very interesting time. I learned a lot, and I know how much we can gain of insight by exchanging ideas and proposals with knowledgeable people like you and influential people like you. It's your knowledge, it's your experience, and most of all, from the perspective, that is to say, our ability to take a long view on the future of Europe. This is crucial to influence and assess the latest developments, but also to communicate to citizens. And citizens often become a bit frustrated with the slow pace of things or with the complexity of the European Union decision making. And we all know how difficult it is to explain. Nevertheless, as you know too well, the European Union needs to be seen and judged as a film and not as a photograph or as a picture. And while there is, of course, always room for criticism, and Parliament and citizen scrutiny should continue, I can confidently say that the response to the present crisis was better than we were able to do before. I think we all learn lessons from every experience that we have. And we have in fact learned the hard lessons of the past. During the financial crisis, some of us in the European Parliament were sometimes the only dissonant voices alerting to the risks of a short-termist response that would not take into due considerations its economic and political effects, namely the cyclical economic impact and also in the concept of democracy. It is true that the euro was saved, that the integrity of the eurozone was kept, but there was in fact quite a high cost whose effects are still being felt. And I don't want to underestimate the others, but the main was our economic, social, and territorial cohesion. We saw regions and sectors that bounced back, and regions that took many years to recover. We saw young people graduating and not finding jobs and becoming desperate. In short, we struggled to formulate a European response to a crisis. With such tough experiences behind us, we can appreciate Europe's unprecedented response to the current crisis. Europe's response is unprecedented from my point of view. First of all, in its scale, because for the first time, we are using Europe's AAA credit rating to borrow on financial markets. And this has created a new 672.5 billion euro investment and reform instrument. We called it Recovery and Resilience Facility. And cohesion policy, the one on which I have the direct responsibility, has been boosted to 375 billion euros. It's its largest ever. Also unprecedented in unity. As Europeans, we are facing these challenges together. We could only have dreamed of such unity in last crisis, and unprecedented in the speed of the response. If we recall, the financial crisis of 2008, it arguably took, from 2008 to, let's put it, whatever it takes, of 2012 by Mario Draghi, it arguably took 4 to 5 years for Europe to react together. This time, we have put together a credible response in 4 or 5 months. And for those that have been following cohesion policy, from the cohesion policy perspective, we had for the first time an emergency support on the ground, So we manage with the cooperation, very intense cooperation of the European Parliament and of the Council. Within 4 to 5 weeks, we had created what we call the Coronavirus Response Investment Initiative, through which, for the first time in history, we enabled the immediate reprogramming of all funds, so the regional fund, social fund, the cohesion fund, mobilizing up to now more than 23 billion euros of emergency support in the regions and countries that needed it most. And we have granted, in fact, nearly 500,000 small and medium companies with working capital to keep them afloat, and supported over 2.5 million people in short-term working arrangements and in healthcare. With another instrument called REACT-EU, we created a 50 billion euro top-up of cohesion policy, by means of which we'll continue to support small and medium companies, the health sector, as well as to repair the damage and to recover from this crisis in a smart and efficient way. And on all this, I have got to praise the role of the European Parliament in this effort. In fact, our CRE proposal, the Coronavirus Investment Initiative, this emergency reprogramming of funds, took a mere 2 weeks to be adopted, with the European Parliament voting electronically, the plenary voting electronically for the first time to enable its approval. Same thing for REACT-EU, which was the first next generation file to be finalized still in second half of 2020. So, my dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, one of Europe's best example of the long view was, as we all know, Robert Schumann's. He famously said, Europe will not be built all at once. We all have repeated this, or according to a single plan, but by concrete acts which create solidarity. And in fact, we have been quoting this, but when we are feeling it and designing it and implementing it, and in fact, it gains a different meaning. And this is how, in fact, we build our Europe brick by brick with concrete acts of solidarity. And I have already evoked the first brick, Europe's rapid and strong response to this crisis. Second brick is Europe's investment in a balanced recovery. It is too early to see the full economic impact of the pandemic. But we already know that the shock was asymmetric, that some regions have suffered more than others. If we want to avoid a repetition of the past, we need to make sure that social and territorial cohesion remains a key part of the recovery. If we want to avoid that this crisis is in the future known as the Great Divider, we have to make sure that the correction of regional asymmetries remains a priority for the recovery. Because the problems of COVID were added to a pre-existing issue that I mentioned before, the plight of middle-income regions and medium-sized and small towns. These regions have stopped converging since 2008. And in fact, most of Europe's growth since then has been concentrated in large metropolitan regions where the high-paying jobs concentrate. We have an opportunity or a duty right now with the growth of teleworking to build the capacity of small centers, to make them more attractive, and to build the public services they need to compete with larger centers. This will also benefit the larger centers, which often are suffering from huge congestion costs. And we should not forget that smaller centers have a high potential in terms of quality of life and environmental sustainability. They offer better living. And this brings me to a third brick of solidarity, support to help all regions through the digital revolution and the transition to a carbon neutral economy. exactly what you, President, just mentioned. Evidence suggests that only 1 in 5 European firms is ready for the digital revolution. Most small and medium companies still lag in terms of digital innovation, particularly those in rural or remote areas without access to high-speed broadband. Similarly, many regions will struggle with the transition to a carbon neutral economy, particularly those dependent on coal. Europe will not be successful in the digital revolution or in becoming the world's first carbon neutral continent if we leave half of our regions or our population behind. This is the moment not just to build back, but to build back better. So in the new cohesion programs starting this year, we anticipate that at least half of our investments will be green and digital, from ultra-fast broadband connecting homes, hospitals, schools to support for innovative small and medium companies, and to their collaborations with research institutions, from green public transport to renewable energy, and much more. Finally, we have several specific bricks to support this economy of the future. The brick of the Just Transition Fund to support the diversification of regions that depend on fossil fuels and other carbon intensive industries and activities. So to help them to adapt and minimizing the social and economic costs of this adaptation. The brick of the renovation wave, ensuring that homes and public buildings are insulated, tackling in one stroke, on one hand, carbon emissions, and on the other hand, energy poverty, and creating a lot of economic activity. And the brick of the new European Bauhaus, rethinking and redesigning our buildings, our spaces, our activities, with the help of architects and designers, citizens, engineers, probably some of you, so that our buildings and spaces are not just more sustainable, but more livable and attractive. Sustainability with style and affordable for all. In conclusion, as I mentioned in the beginning, you are those with perspective, able to take the long view. And in this long view, I see many reasons to be optimistic for Europe's future. We are building with the bricks of solidarity, from the ventilators and vaccines in the crisis to designing a recovery which promotes quality of life and jobs for all regions, for all citizens, a successful digital revolution for all regions, and the transition to the green economy for all regions as well. With no region left behind. I know it's a dream, but we have got to dream. Europe is itself a dream, and no European citizen feeling forgotten. We are investing in innovation, we are investing in renovation, and most of all, we are challenging the concepts of design to make our spaces not only more sustainable, but also more attractive and affordable. Some of the foundations for this success were laid on your watch, in your time, as members of the European Parliament. I know that at the time we experienced sometimes frustrations and difficulties, especially from my own experience in the financial crisis. But in the long view, our commitment to the concrete acts of solidarity was built brick by brick. Europe we see today. Work is far from being finished. The European Monetary Union is still incomplete. The banking union that we contribute to launch is not yet finalized. Progress on a more just tax system remains elusive. The pandemic showed that we need to build a health union, and our foreign policy still needs to be beefed up, to say the least, to face the return of power politics. However, we need to see the film. And as I mentioned before, not only a single picture. There is progress on all fronts, even if not enough for us to sit and relax. But I hope you are proud of it. I personally am. And I look forward to our discussion. But before moving the floor to you, a big thank you to all of you for the work that you have done in your life, in your public life, in your private life, in your engagement. And a big thank you for having the time and the interest to follow up in this incredible network of citizenship and of common progress. So thank you once again to all of you. And I'll be very interested in engaging with you in a dialogue. Thank you once again.
Okay, now it works again. Hopefully you can hear me now.
Perfect.
Okay, obrigado again to our commissioner. And I really sincerely want to thank you for your contribution, for your speech, but for your work you are doing, not only in this field of cohesion, but for the European Union as a whole. And I thank you that you are ready to answer questions or to listen to comments. And before we ask our members, I propose that we give our former presidents of the former members association the possibility to say a few words to us. And I will go now in the historic order of their presidencies. So the first would be Jose Maria Gil Robles Gil Delgado. Please, Jose Maria.
On m'entend maintenant, oui.
Can you hear me? Yes, I think so. We would like to thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chair. And I would like first to say hello to all my former colleagues. And I would like to thank the Commissioner. It's a great regret for me not to be able to do it. Really, in reality, it's only remotely, but it's not possible today. I've started working on the European Union when I was still living in Portugal. So for me, European Union is linked to Portugal. I cannot separate the two things. Still, I have a question that is very crucial to me, as I am repeating it since the 1997 in the European Council. To do all the things we want to do, we need a lot of money, a huge lot of money. And so the union has to be financed with proper equities. And this time, the union has had a great basis. They started on having the financing aspect dealt with a solidarity loan. But now we will have to pay for it up until 2138. Do you imagine? So I think we will have to double the budget of the European Union. We cannot keep financing the European Union with a budget of 1% of the GDP. We will have to get to the 2% level, at least. So for the next years, the years to come, we will have to introduce new resources, new financial means. So I would like to have your ideas on this idea of doubling the budget of the European Union and the proper financing of the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Jose Maria Gil Robles Gil Delgado, for your inspiration and for your demand that we go further with the money and with the income and with the policy of the European Union. And now the next one in the line of the former presidents of the former members association is Pat Cox. And please, Patrick, I think Pat is the abbreviation of Patrick, and Patrick is a patron of Ireland. So President Pat Cox, please take the floor.
So thank you very much, Hans Gert. Good evening, colleagues. Good evening, Madam Commissioner. Several remarks. Firstly, my greetings, of course, to all of the former colleagues. So many familiar faces that I see. Most I know and some that I don't know, but it's good to see you all. Secondly, my greetings, of course, to Jose Maria, to Enrique, and to you, Mr. President, and through you to all of the committee members. And thank you and the Secretariat for the events of this week. And in particular, I would like to remark how moving I found, even though it was virtual, last evening's memorial service for our deceased colleagues. And I understood from your remarks, Mr. President, that some of the family members of some of the deceased colleagues are joining us this evening. I would like to take this opportunity to say to all of you a word of sincere condolences on your loss and your family, and a word of thank you for the service that your family member and with your family assistance rendered to the European Parliament. As regards policy issues, I agree 100% with Jose Maria on financing, so I won't repeat it. But I do think, Commissioner, you emphasized in quoting the Schuman Declaration and words, of course, that were written in the early draft by Jean Monnet, that there was always in the mind of Monnet and Schuman, and especially Monnet, that what we do must be concrete and not abstract. So it is good to hear the concrete things of which you speak, because if we speak of too many abstractions, we risk not to animate people to do with supporting the Union and its future. And my question, Commissioner, if I may, is about that future. We have a working group organized, a reflection group organized by our President Hans-Gert Pöttering on the future of Europe. And this exercise is now engaged. It's in its early phases. Could I ask you as a commissioner, and could I ask you through you of the Commission, what are the bottom line expectations of the European Commission in terms of this exercise of reflection on the future of Europe? So again, Hans-Gert, thank you very much for the invitation, and to all the colleagues, wonderful to see you. And glad that we are all in a condition that has survived the COVID crisis of the past year and a bit. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Pat, for your remarkable statement. And I remember always when you were elected President of the European Parliament, I was involved as Chairman of the EPP-ED group, and it was really a great time. Thank you so much. And now we come to the youngest former President of the former Members Association as far as the timing is concerned. So Enrique, you are the youngest, and I ask Enrique Baron Crespo now to speak to us, please.
Well, you know that to be young, this is an illness that heals itself. No, well, good evening to everybody, to all the members. And well, we paid yesterday homage to our deceased colleagues, but it's important to see that we are alive and that we want to go forward building up Europe. This is important. One reflection and one question. When we began, I remember the time of Maastricht, to speak about cohesion, well, the question was not, it was difficult even to translate. Now it has become one of the central ideas of the European construction. Cohesion comes from physics. This means the force that can keep the bodies together. And this is very important for us because the big difference in the fight against this crisis and against the pandemic is that we have made steps forward, and I would say we have made very big leaps forward. Well, I have been working with Elisa a long time to double the budget. Well, it was a dream. And then I think that cohesion has become one of the driving ideas, and this applies first to cohesion on the economic and social field. And on the economic field, well, for the moment, there is a wide support, for example, for our currency, for the euro. But the question is that how we can make progress in order to heal the wounds of the pandemic and the big inequalities in the development of our societies. This is a very, very a gigantic task. And I do think, you have mentioned some of the aspects of this challenge. I do think that we must think and apply all our policies, taking into account how we can reinforce cohesion in all fields. And one of the fields is social cohesion, not as a complement of the economic cohesion, is how to build this civil society. And I mean, I use the word, the concept, because it's the Commission that asked us to engage in this exercise of the Conference for the Future of Europe. That is not only to look to the crystal ball, is to say to see how we can make progress and build up, make the next step forward in the European construction. And well, I don't want to repeat the questions of Pat and Jose Maria, but I would add one point is I don't want to ask you all the secrets and the project and the program of the Commission for the conference on the future of Europe and perhaps on the future convention. But the question is how we can apply the idea, the concept of cohesion, in order to make a fruitful debate that will make the community, the union and the community principle. You have mentioned, well, Monet, Schumann and all the others. Well, the question is how we can make progress. I can use one more sentence. I'm not asking only on the federal method, but I think that, well, to apply the majority principle is an important one. Thank you very much. Obrigado.
I thank you very much, Enrique Baron Crespo, for your important contribution. And I think one can even apply the word cohesion for the legal construction of the European Union. We all states, we all as politicians or ex-politicians, all citizens have to accept the legal order of the European Union. And in the end, if there is a question or if there are differences of opinion, then the European Court of Justice takes the decision and everybody has to follow the decisions of the European Court of Justice. And those states who don't do it, they start to exclude themselves from the community of the European Union. Now I have three prominent guests who take the floor. It's in the following line: Mikuláš Dzurinda, László Andor, and Dieter Schlenker. So first, Mikuláš Dzurinda, the former Prime Minister of Slovakia and now President at the Wilfried Martens Center for European Studies. Please, Mikuláš.
Dear Mr. President, dear Hans-Gert, thank you very much for being invited to celebrate, but even more to think about the future. Congratulations. And I'm so pleased that we have already done together, Hans-Gert, with the former members association and the Wilfried Martens Center for European Studies, and you can count on our cooperation also in the future. One very brief remark and then maybe a question. We are now very happy because Recovery Fund represents a real success story, a breakthrough, I would say. The process was very difficult, but the final solution is very encouraging. At the same time, I think more and more about the need to invest this money effectively, because the day will come when this money will be or should be repaid. So I mean, or I speak about the need to think about fiscal consolidation of our public finances at the European level, but especially in our member states that are already now heavily indebted. So this is my remark, to invest money effectively and to be ready sooner or later for fiscal consolidation. And the question, we speak about cohesion. For countries of Central and Eastern Europe, the issue is very important. But hand in hand with cohesion, the process of convergence is running. And my question addressed to Madam Commissioner is, how is she satisfied with the speed of the convergence? Because many people in our countries, especially in countries that have joined the EU in 2004, there is an impression that the speed of economic convergence could be or should be faster. The question is, what should be done on the side of the EU member states and how the EU institutions could contribute to the process of convergence even more than before. Hans-Gert, many thanks and all the best in the future.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, dear Mikolas, for your contribution. And I really want to extend many words of thanks for the good cooperation between the former Members Association and the Wilfried Martens Center for European Studies under your leadership. Thank you so much. And now Laszlo Andor, Secretary General of the Foundation for European Progressive Studies and former EU Commissioner for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion. Please, Mr. Secretary General.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good evening, dear Elisa. It was great to hear your introduction on this important topic. And may I particularly welcome this opportunity to reconnect with former members of the Employment Committee, with whom I had many, many good exchanges in my time as a commissioner. I can see Mr. Thomas Mann, but I suppose there might be others as well here tonight. I very much agree with the points that have been made about the major step forwards in this crisis as compared to the previous one. So if someone must be ready to admit that in the previous crisis, it just took too long to find the right direction of the crisis response, I'm happy to admit this and appreciate that as compared to about 2 years between 2010 and 12, which was needed to get the direction right. Last year, it only took about 2 months, from March to May, to develop a comprehensive package of crisis response, which indeed has been really pioneering, as it has been described by the Commissioner. I think in any kind of crisis, the stabilization requires 2 things. Number 1 is speed, number 2, volume. And I think the magnitude, the critical amount of the intervention is something which was previously probably not appreciated. I think we have to be not only very happy with the current developments, but also in comparison with the United States, which never refrained from going big when there was a need for fiscal expansion or monetary expansion, this time around, Europe is doing quite well, although maybe at a later assessment, we should also see whether there is a need to do more or not. Before asking also one question, because I also prepared a question to the Commissioner, let me just highlight that FEPS as a foundation is always very happy to work not only with the current MEPs, but also the former ones. Our President Maria Joao is one of the former members, just like Enrique Baron Crespo is the president of our scientific council. We just published a book, it's called Our European Future, as a contribution to the Conference on the Future of Europe, and several former MEPs like Jo Leinen, Mercedes Bresso, Britta Thomsen also contributed to this book. We will be happy to share the PDF with you because it's still being printed. My question to Elisa would be whether in the Pioneering Next Generation EU, you see some guarantees for the involvement of the local actors, whether it is social partners, whether it is local governments, which often saw themselves in conventional cohesion policy subsided by the national actors, and sometimes it also takes a political nature, but in any case, I think going local to detect what the local priorities are and to try to connect the European funding with those, I think is absolutely vital. To the very constructive proposal made by Gilles Robles, I believe raising this question about the size of the EU budget is timely. I always remember the so-called McDougall report, which in the 1970s, carried out a kind of public finance analysis of the European community budget. I think it would be timely perhaps to ask a similar expert committee to have an independent review because the so-called credibility gap between the commitments of the EU and the financial capacities obviously is a significant matter. Thank you very much for your attention.
I thank you very much, Laszlo Andor, for your contribution, and good luck for your work, for your foundation. And I thank you as well for the good cooperation with your Foundation for European Progress Studies. And now, last not least, Dr. Dieter Schlenker, the director of the Historical Archives of the European Union in Florence, and he is working at one of the nicest places in Europe. I would not dare to say the nicest place, but one of the nicest places in Europe, that's in Florence. Please, Dieter Schlenker. You don't see him on the video? Maybe he will join us later. We don't see him on the video. So we come now to the questions of our members. And do we have already some who asked for the floor? Can you give me names? I just have to get the names who asked for the floor. Who asked for the floor? Nobody so far?
No.
Oh, we got a written question.
Mr.
From Manuel Porto. Is cohesion just a question of solidarity, or with more cohesion internally, we can compete better at the world level? So I have no other requests for questions. So Commissioner Ferreira, please be so kind and give your answer to the remarks of the speakers.
Well, thank you very much. It is we just confirmed that it is a privilege to have this this kind of discussion with such eminent Europeans, I would say. I will try to address the questions that were put. I think the first question by President José María Gil Robles. Merci bien de votre gentillesse en relation à
Thank you very much for your kind words also about Portugal. It is my home country, and it was very moving to listen to your comments. I do believe that you've asked a very central question. Laszlo Andor just mentioned a report. We've also talked about the Delors Committee. But yes, it's true, there was this initiative, but it is only today, actually, that we finished to register the authorization of all EU countries so that the Commission can, for the first time, go on the market and take and borrow in the name of the Commission for member states. This is quite incredible. 750 billion euros. And we have now a budget of 1.3 billion. So it's more than double. I think this is unprecedented in its form and in its scope. Regarding payments, the Commission made a proposal, the Parliament and the Council also, and there is one clear trend. This year, we want to tackle the question of own resources. This is a topic that has been discussed many times, that has spurred many debates already. Mario Monti made a list of possibilities regarding own resource. So there is an actual debate, and I think it is crucial to have your commitment and the participation of all present members to have a constructive debate and objective debate on this matter. We have already 4 or 5 possibilities on the table, but it's true, we have to go the extra mile to have, so that we can have more sustainability to pay to debt. I think it is always a good thing when the EU arrives on international monetary markets with a long-term debt that is sustainable, that is creditable, and comes on the market and presents a financial product that is completely valid comparatively to other short-term financial products. And I think that this is really good for the financial stability of the EU and for the entire world, because this actually gives a huge investment opportunity for alternatives, as alternatives to short-term investments. But we will see. I think that for now, this is what we need to tackle, this matter of sustainability and stability.
Refer to the fact that not only, I mean, and I would like to join my voice to this compliment and this paying tribute to deceased colleagues, of course. But then you moved into another aspect that is concrete, not abstract, and I think that's what we are trying to do. I don't know if it depends on having so many women, because women are very much down to earth, I think, now in the Commission for the first time in history. If that is not the case, let's attribute it to the circumstances, because the situation was so dramatic and so unexpected and so, critical. And it wouldn't allow for any sort of blame game, because we were all trying to understand how we could fight the pandemic, that all of a sudden we became much more united again. And after a first moment when we were certain member states trying to close their borders, but very early they realized that they could not close the borders and still be capable of having basic products, basic imports, even pharmaceutical products. And so all of a sudden we understood that either we saved ourselves together, or we would have no future, not individually and not collectively. But I think this is a good inspiration for the debate on the future of Europe. And I think, I mean, from my side, because I don't want to move into I cannot speak in the name of the Commission, and the portfolio, as you know, is with Dubravka, my colleague. So, but anyway, I think I think we should speak to the citizens and avoid spending our energies in internal debates between institutions that no one can address. I think certain issues, such as should the Commission tackle more concrete things, like for instance, health issues, because one of the criticisms that the Commission suffered was from member states and from citizens and from entities that didn't realize that the competencies of the Commission as such in relation to health issues were very marginal. And so they were saying, why doesn't the Commission do anything? And the Commission didn't have the competencies to act. But then we acted, for instance, for the vaccines, and I think we did the right thing. But this was over-interpretation, so to speak, of our mandate. And of course, it was at the moment, I mean, confirmed by the other institutions. But in fact, the other issue is we have got to address, and I think President Maron Crespo mentioned it in a very clear way. I mean, and I think Manuel Porto also addressed the same issue. If you have lack of consistency in your internal position, you are not a strong partner. And we see this in all the situations. If you have an internal divergence and you cannot present yourself in the international framework in a coherent position, you are much weaker. And we see this, and I addressed in my speech certain areas that in fact illustrate this. But I think cohesion became more and more relevant when we look at the DNA of Europe. The DNA of Europe is that, and for a long time, we didn't have an industrial policy. Industrial policy was the outcome of the internal market game. But in the internal market, if you are competing in different partners with different levels, different productivities, different capacities, I mean, the winner is going to take it all. And then you create permanent indebtedness on certain member states and the permanent surpluses in other member states. In particular, if you engage on top of everything else in a common currency that is more adapted to certain levels of productivity than others. And so cohesion becomes the other side of the coin. And cohesion is trying to stimulate to the catching up of the weaker so that they can speed up their capacity to compete. So, of course, when we are looking at internal market, but the world became globalized, the interface and the external policy has a major influence in how you and the impact in the internal market. And so the internal market is I mean, it was a source of industrial capacity. Now, also with this commission, we are trying to have a more strategic, open approach to the globalization. And we are talking about industrial ecosystems with a new concept of having a strategic approach of Europe vis-a-vis the other international partners, as all the others have in relation to the globalized economy. And I think this goes, I mean, directly into the question of Prime Minister Nicolas Zurinda, because in fact, yes, fiscal consolidation must be there, but it's a question of timing. If you start engaging into fiscal consolidation, when you really have to do some counter-cyclical policies, you are going to enlarge the spinning in a negative, eventually in a negative sense. But you are absolutely right when you talk about the speed of convergence and what determines the speed of convergence. And in a nutshell, because this would be a very interesting discussion for another another meeting probably, but in big traces, you see when countries move from very low levels of income, they really speed up convergence. Often this convergence is not necessarily followed by internal convergence. But generally, in the phase in which you have a lot of infrastructures to do, a lot of huge investments, after an initial phase in which you don't have the project, you have a speed up and you have a massive convergence. The critical situation occurs when you are caught in the middle, when you cannot rely on basic infrastructures, and when you have to go upscale in quality projects, in adding value to your economy, in making connection between universities and knowledge and competitiveness or productivity, and there you start having some problems. Also, you have the impacts, and when you have a crisis, you can revert the convergence track. The same thing when you have an enlargement of Europe, because then you have the whole rebalance of the comparative advantages, particularly with foreign direct investment. One thing that is crucial is for the keeping up the pace of convergence is the quality of institutions and the quality of public administration, because this is essential, and that's why we are also trying to support through the RR plans this upskilling of the public administration and of the institutions in general. And with Laszlo, I think you have touched upon the one critical element. Yes, it is absolutely essential, and we are trying to do it, and often it is not easy to combine the participation of social partners, of all the actors on the ground, with the speed that is required by the need to catch up quickly. But anyway, both in the recovery and resilience plans, and now in the partnership agreement for the funds of 21-27, or the REACT-EU, we are asking for a full participation of social partners. And I think the Porto Summit was really a very important moment in which you made sure that things that got to be addressed also with the people and the employment and the convergence from this human side at its center. And because today is the Children's Day, I would like to recall your attention to the fact that in 2019, 18 million children were at the risk of poverty. So when you are talking about these funds, when I talk about these opportunities, we have to make sure that that children that are victims, and they are innocent victims, at least that we organize the system in such a way that we prevent them from being frustrated citizens. Because if you have a circle, a vicious circle, in which as a child you didn't have proper education, you didn't have proper housing, you didn't have proper food, your life will be different from all the other citizens. And 18 million is really a massive amount of children. So, and situation has become worse with this pandemic, of course. So I think we all at least make sure that our future, our next generation, is really made of European citizens in all the sense, also in terms of access and in terms of quality of life, and that they can have a full participation in our progress as adults. And I stop here, and thank you very, very much for your questions. And I think we should engage into a broader debate on each and all the topics that you have raised.
Madam Commissioner, I thank you very much for your comments. We have still 3 colleagues asking for the floor, and if they make a short question, would you still stay with us for another 5 minutes?
Yes, I will.
Okay, so I ask Sofia Kokovic, then Bruno Bossier, and then Michael Elliott to ask their questions or to make their comments, but please, very short because Commissioner Ferreira has to leave us. Sofia Kokovic, please.
Thank you very much, President. Very shortly, cohesion can stick the family of EU member states together. That's I made this phrase during this meeting today. Otherwise, I have just one question, very focusing. We were talking also on our roundtable about the teleworking. And you, Madam Commissioner, you also say about the future of teleworking. But it is very important also lifelong learning processes, education. And it is also very important for us as former members. So what kind of future could we wait on this area? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophia. And now Bruno Bossier.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Madam Commissioner. During your intervention, you talked about social and economic cohesion, and you also talked about the environment. But for cohesion to be integral and comprehensive, we would need another dimension, a real political and democratic cohesion in order to take into account in the decision-making process the diversity that exists in the EU and even within member states. So here's my double question. How can we strengthen the so-called multi-level governance? And more concretely, how can we strengthen the role of the Committee of the Regions, which is celebrating its 27th anniversary at the moment when you're opening the conference on the future of Europe? I think we need to make progress in terms of multi-level governance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruno Boissier. And now, last not least, Michael Elliott, please.
Thank you. I think I'm one of only 2 or 3 former British members in this meeting. I do want to assure everyone that there's still a huge number of people in Britain who are saddened by the fact that we've left the European Union. In fact, the area that I represented in the Parliament, West London, voted by a substantial majority to remain. But we must look to the future. And although I'm involved with 2 or 3 organisations seeking the closest remaining membership of the European Union, liaison with the European Union, and with a view to the possibility, albeit sometime in the future, of possibly rejoining, I'd like to ask the Commissioner if thought is being given, bearing in mind what's happened this week too with the collapse of negotiations with Luxembourg, whether thought is being given to any changes or reforms in the European Union that would make it more attractive for European countries not currently in membership, either because they've never joined or because they've left, to reconsider their position. Because I believe very much in the future of the European Union, and I believe that my country, Britain, has had a lot to contribute, which we're now not able to do. So I'm just asking about any thought in relation to possible reforms and encouragement for other member states not in membership to join.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael Elliott, and especially for your European commitment. Madame la Commissaire.
Colleague Sofia Kukovic, you are very right. Cohesion is the instrument, it's the glue to stick the family together. You are absolutely right. And I think for this, teleworking is a fact, but teleworking was an imposition by circumstances. And I think it has still to be kept on board, to be used, but this cannot substitute the personal and physical contact completely. It can give opportunities, for instance, for location and development of mid-sized towns, for instance, because you don't have to be physically in the big towns. But you mentioned another issue, and this is lifelong learning. And this is a major item for which we are really preparing, and there is a huge number of instruments that in fact are directed towards that. Because when we move from when we say that we had an economy of the past and we want to move into the economy of the future, what we have to do is to have the instruments that help people to move away from those industries and sectors that are not viable anymore, and to help them to be fit for the new sectors, for the new opportunities in the market, because we are moving towards the green and a more digital economy. So this is absolutely at the core of our concerns. En relation à la question qui a été posée par Monsieur Bruno.
To answer Mr. Bruno Boissier's question, you talked about the differences among member states. This is true. We take them into account as best as we can because we sort of force country to work on a more regional basis in order to negotiate partnership agreements. And with regional or local agents, they must think about what objectives they want to work on and use development instruments. And you also referred to the Committee of the Regions, with which I've had a lot of meetings, many meetings. We are in permanent contact and have a very open dialogue, but it's true that in the Committee of the Regions, there are some very powerful, very autonomous regions and that have a major budget, whereas other representatives are towns or regions which have different powers. So at EU level, this is something we must continue to work on, but we do recognize that there is a major discrepancy with states that are very decentralized and others that are centralized. But we still have a lot of work with the Committee of the Regions. They are working very actively.
Well, thank you very much for your engagement. Thank you very much for all your work. Yes, I mean, as we started by saying, I mean, we are building Europe as we go. And I must only tell you that yes, we miss you very much, but it was your choice. We have got to respect it, and we'll see what life will bring, what our dialogue will bring. I think the important thing now is that we keep by our agreements, that we respect each other, and that we keep a good open dialogue, so that whatever we can build in future for mutual benefit will be in conditions to materialize it and to build it. And this is, I mean, we have got to go on, UK and us, and let's just respect our mutual agreements and our mutual positions. And that's what in Europe we are trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner, for your presence, for your speech, for your answers, very competent answers to the questions. And you always can count on us. We might not be the most important institution or organization in the European Union, but we belong to the most, to the institutions with the most of the passion. So still, we are very much engaged with a lot of passion, energy, and motivation. And so we are on your side. All the best. Obrigado, Madam Commissioner. All the best, Elisa Ferreira.
Thank you very much. Dankeschön. And please don't minimize your role. You are very influential, very knowledgeable. So please keep participating and keep active as you are now. Thank you very much.
I understand you even speak German, so I say Dankeschön as well. All the best. Alles Gute. Okay.
Thank you very much.
I thank you. Obrigado, obrigado, obrigado. Thank you. Okay, and now we come to another important point. I want to invite our good friend Monica Baldi to present the video on the 20th anniversary of the Former Members Association, and thank her, Monica Baldi, for coordinating the production of the video and of the 20th anniversary logo. This is really a great work. Please, Monica, we have now the pleasure to listen to you.
Thanks to you, Mr. President. Thanks for your work. Buonasera, and thanks to all the participants connected virtually. The 20th anniversary video in English and French that we present today on the activity of our association is a result of a great team effort. And for this, I thank Elisabetta Fonck and Elisabeth Bravo. Allow me to thank the European Parliament and in particular the former presidents, the members of the board and all members of our association who authorized the image and recorded the messages, welcoming the proposal with enthusiasm. In the first part, the messages of the president are transmitted accompanied by the notes of the Hymn to Joy. At the opening, the president of the European Parliament, David Sassoli, and the president of our association, Hans-Gert Pöttering, followed by our past presidents, Lord Harry Plumb, founder, Jose Maria Robles, Pat Cox, and Enrique Baron Crespo. In the second part, the abundant activity carried out by the association in the 20 years is narrated through some significant photos, which highlight action through education, political dialogue, and democracy building. In evidence, the EP2 Campus program, the debates organized by the Research Service of the European Parliament, the European University Institute of Florence, and the historical archives of the European Union. Also highlighted is the political dialogue with representatives of parliaments around the world, governments, NGOs, academic institutions, European political foundation, and with parliamentaries and civil society. In the end, the moving memorial service is also remembered. I hope you like it. Arrivederci.
We celebrate 20 years of the Association of the Former Members of the European Parliament. I want to thank all who have made their contribution in our association, the former presidents, the members of the board, and all members of our association. And let us not only look back, let us look to the future, and we should be self-confident to defend our European ideals and to build a strong and a free Europe.
Il Parlamento europeo è la nostra casa comune, è l'istituzione che più di ogni altra ha un legame diretto con i cittadini, che ha il dovere di rappresentarli, ascoltarli, difenderli. Quando abbiamo assunto il nostro mandato ci siamo impegnati ad onorare queste promesse, a rispondere in modo forte alle esigenze e alle preoccupazioni degli europei, in un periodo di sfide epocali che hanno alimentato un diffuso senso di smarrimento. Lavorare per l'Europa è un processo continuo che non si esaurisce con la scadenza del nostro mandato. Per questo oggi voglio ringraziarvi per il vostro impegno continuo, la vostra passione, la vostra dedizione, che non si sono fermati con la fine di una legislatura. La difesa dei nostri valori fondanti deve essere perseguita ogni giorno. Vi ringrazio perché la vostra attività contribuisce a rafforzare quel senso di comunità, quell'impegno costante di cui abbiamo bisogno per rendere le nostre democrazie più forti, più solide e pronte a rispondere alle richieste dei nostri cittadini.
As former members of the European Parliament, our hearts and minds are still with the European Parliament and its members. And it's our common duty to defend our European values and not only to look back, but to look to the future and to work for the unity and freedom and peace of our continent.
Well, here we are, the FMA is 20 years old. It was set up after the 1999 election when a number of people who were leaving said, look, we wanted to stay in touch with each other from our different countries. Henry Plum as the rapporteur, the first president of the FMA, and me as the quester responsible.
Hello, thank you for inviting me to join you in the celebration of 20 years since the start of the ex-members of the European Parliament. I'm delighted to be here and to be the first chairman of a great organisation that's grown over a period of years.
Pendant ces 20 ans, l'association a permis de maintenir les liens entre les anciens députés, d'utiliser son savoir-faire pour discuter dans les universités de l'Union et de ses alentours, de faire chaque année une mission bien organisée et d'utiliser les moyens du Parlement.
The directly elected European Parliament is a young institution, and so, not surprisingly, our former Members Association, at 20 years old, itself is a comparatively young organisation. Our membership and our role have expanded over time. Staying in touch with former colleagues and getting to know others and appreciate them, often even more than when we serve together in different political groups or on different committees, has been one of the most positive features for me of my FMA membership.
Thanks to the former Members Association, we can go on working in this noble cause of the European Union, in the schools, in the EPIC2 campus, in the institutes, everywhere. Happy birthday, and let's move forward.
The FMA connects former members of the European Parliament with current members, policymakers, EU citizens and academics, promoting active citizenship through education, political dialogue and democracy building. Through the EP to Campus programme, former members have devoted their time and experience pro bono, sharing their insights into how the European Union, and in particular the European Parliament, really work, with open debates on key issues and future challenges such as artificial intelligence, climate change and the economy. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, the FMA has continued to contribute to academic activities, with participation from university students all around the world. To connect with policymakers, academics and EU citizens, former members of the European Parliament participate in high-level debates organised with the European Parliamentary Research Service and by the European University Institute in Florence. Academic discussions prepared by the Robert Schuman Centre for Advanced Studies, and jointly organised debates on developments in the European Union and citizens' participation. Former members also introduce secondary school students to important topics related to the history of European integration and to current developments within the EU institutions. This programme, run by the Historical Archives of the European Union, creates social spaces for discussion and learning about Europe, democracy and citizenship. Over the past 20 years, the FMA has been fostering political dialogue with representatives of parliaments, governments, NGOs and academic institutes in the EU's neighbouring countries in support of democracy, good governance and regional cooperation. Former members have promoted dialogue with European political foundations and with parliamentarians and civil society in the EU member states, stimulating wider public debate and generating open and plural discussion on European policies and the challenges at stake.
What is our expectation to the Conference on the Future of Europe? That means it should become a contest of ideas on the future of Europe, visible to all European citizens.
The FMA encourages contacts between similar organisations in Europe and all over the world, promoting knowledge about the European Union and debate on its development in the political field. In doing so, it enhances transatlantic relationships and dialogue on fundamental topics such as democracy and human rights, health, the climate, and digitalisation. The FMA brings former members together, providing them with a forum for meetings, discussions, and cultural, scientific, and social events, and fostering relations between former and current members of the European Parliament.
The EU is in a unique position because it is still the biggest internal market of the world. With its unique supranational democracy, it has to look for active partnerships.
Donc, le budget c'est essentiel et le Parlement européen, malheureusement, vote les dépenses, ne vote pas les recettes. Le Parlement européen doit se battre pour obtenir qu'il y ait des ressources propres.
Each year, the FMA pays tribute to deceased former members for their service to the European Parliament through a moving memorial service that touches the hearts of their families, colleagues, and the public alike.
And the memory of how they contributed to what is the European Union today.
Former members fully engage with society and make an important contribution to reconnecting constituencies with elected representatives. I want to thank all the association's members and the members of the board for their strong commitment over the years to the growth of the association and for making it what it is today. There is life after Parliament. Sincere thanks go to the former and current staff members and trainees who have contributed to the association's work and success over the past years.
20th anniversary of FMA. Experience for the future.
So thank you so much for this great film. It was really beautiful. I want to thank all who made a contribution to this film, which is very extraordinary, and very heartful thanks goes to Monica Baldi. You had a great idea, and what you did together with our secretariat is really almost unbelievable. Thank you so much. I want to thank all members of our association for their passion, for their contribution to our work. And we, as long as we live, be inspired by the idea to unite our continent on the basis of peace and liberty. Our thanks go to all our guests and families of the deceased members. The virtual memorial service the day before yesterday has been a very touching moment, and the association is glad to contribute to remembering the memory of our former members in exceptional and difficult circumstances. I want to remind our members to connect to the 20th Annual General Assembly taking place tomorrow morning and starting at 10 o'clock. And the voting procedure, and this is very important, the voting procedure will open at 9:30. The link to connect has been already sent by the Secretariat by email. It would be advisable to connect as of 19:15 to make sure the connection works fine. Thank you all again, especially to the former Members Association staff. To Elisabetta, who is sitting right of me. You cannot see her, but she looks beautiful like always, and you saw her in the film. Thank you, Elisabetta, and especially not only for your work you do, but for the technical assistance as well. So this is really great. I want to thank Lisette, and I want to thank Vale, and I want to thank Valerie, who organized these important celebrations with great commitment and passion. And happy birthday to the former Members Association. 20 years, this is a beautiful age, and all the best to you, and remain healthy. All the best for all of you and your families. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Goodbye.